What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the second album by Swedish extreme metal band Bathory. Basically, this project is called The Return of the Darkness and Evil, and it came out in the spring of 1985. So this is kind of a differential type one to get to here. I haven't really covered that much black metal or death metal as far as those pitches going to happen. It's an interesting type genre, but apparently Bathory was one of those type ones that helped helm that particular subgenre and some of those subgenres as far as those pitches going to happen. Now, this is back in the 80s when metal was pretty supreme as far as those pitches going to happen between folks like Metallica and Slayer, Iron Maiden, some of those type folks. Obviously, Black Sabbath, AC/DC, some of those type folks. But I look after it's just a good enough type pitch to kind of get some of that here, just because this is some lesser known type stuff. I mean, this being a Swedish band, I question the sheer full-blown popularity that has in America. The thing about it is this band is not still functional just because of the fact that the Korthon cat, the lead vocalist Korthon, has been deceased since 2004, which is an unfortunate concept as far as those pitches going to happen. But as far as those pitches going to happen, but I look after just being able to say this is some quality stuff here, and apparently in their early days or later on, after about a number of albums, they switched to Viking metal. So Bathory eventually became Viking metal as far as those pitches going to happen. But in the 80s, they were more black metal, death metal, some of those type fares. But I just kind of question like the concept of like some of these other type projects because this is an interesting aspect to kind of get here. A lot of this just reminds me of like pretty sheer and just overall blistering kind of dungeon metal and pitches like that. More indoor type metal, more indoor type metal type fare, less outdoor kind of smoke sessions outside. I'd say more just kind of pitches of just PlayStation music pitches like that. Just some indoor kind of grab some Pizza Hut, some of that type fare. Just headbang indoors and just enjoy like some basic kind of modest house party type gigs as far as that particular kind of goes. And I do feel like Metallica had an album similar to that way out in the 2000s, which was basically their Saint Anger album from 2003. It's that same sort of dungeon metal. But I do like the concept of some dungeon metal here. It just really has a good aspect. It's a very haunting project. It's right down to the demonic vocals of Korthon as far as that particular kind of goes. So really do appreciate the aspect behind it. Just really I mean, the concept, I don't know, doom metal, black metal is full blown death metal, some of those type pitches, but I do like the overall shriek is kind of, if you like the shriek of like folks like the cat that was on AC/DC's Back in Black, which I forget his name. I forget. I'll probably put it in the connotation, but he was the vocalist on the Back in Black album from 1980, and then Ozzy Osbourne's kind of banshee-like vocals from like the 80s on Black Sabbath and his solo type fare of the 80s. That has it's a good concept kind of get some of this. It's not obviously like in normal type tone. It just feels really demonic and just something goon or goblin esque as far as those pitches will kind of happen. And just look after the aspect behind it. It's really kind of a differential type tone, but I like the overall appeal. This is great for like late September to about late November as far as those pitches would kind of happen. This is a classic album. I recommend every song on here, so I'll go ahead and say it gets a 10 out of 10. Now, I'm not necessarily sure if there's a single off this particular product, but there is at least two songs that have over about 600,000 plays. So I'm just going to assume that Born for Burning was kind of the single here. I don't know which songs. I looked some information up about Bathory, and apparently they did not tour that much past like the 80s as far as those pitches kind of happen, or at least they didn't do very many live shows and touring as far as that. They may not have ever toured, but they didn't do very many live shows. I just would have to say just within the pitch behind it, but I question if they even had music videos made or some of that type fare. I don't really know the full blown extent of their commercial aspects as far as the particular kind of goes. They might just be hole in the wall type metal as far as the particular kind of happens. But apparently they did have some affluence and influence just because apparently there's this Fenriz Cat of Dark Throne that praised this album that said it was like an essence of black metal. So I do think this is one of the inspirational type ones to kind of get within that particular tone. Just had a lot of big deals. Like they were also, but Bathory was also some that coined Viking metal as far as that pitch can happen. But I think they had a lot to do with just the overall shape shifting of like black metal and death metal, some of those type tones. Now, there were a lot of metal subgenres that kind of stemmed out of like the 80s. You know, you did have glam metal, you did have glam rock, you did have hair metal, you did have some of those type ones. You did have like thrash metal that Metallica was kind of getting into, and Slayer and some of those type folks. And they're just overall, like I do think black metal is one of the original type ones, but it's just good to see some of the architects of some of this. Now I can't full blown confirm that just because I don't know as full blown the history of some of this. It's just kind of more shots in the dark because this is kind of some new subgenres to me. Kind of when I first reviewed Marilyn Manson back in the summer of 2015, pitches like that. But it's an interesting type concept kind of get to some of this. But yeah, I recommend every song on here. So basically, there's 12 songs on here, but not counting the intro and outro, that would narrow it down to 10 songs. So I just would have to say all 10 of these songs I recommend. We're just going to go through these now. The thing about it is minus like one song on here, which is just the Rite of Darkness. I'd say pretty much damn near every song on this particular product had the same kind of thrashing, just overall blistering kind of doom metal, this kind of black metal type torment that just goes along with it. All these riffs are just pounding, just complete mosh pit type energy. If you like things like Metallica, if you like things like Mushroom Head, if you like things like definitely Slipknot at some of their craziest, this is definitely some of the most vicious type torrents to kind of get. But the thing about it is, a lot of these songs on this particular album are more indoor hangouts. Not the concept like backyard type fair, outdoor type gigs, pitches like that. It's not really like a summer project. It's just a lot more indoor bound, either in like the winter when it's the holiday season, or just like January, February, or just pitches of like October, September, October, November, some of those type fairs to just appreciating like the crisp kind of cooler autumn weather, just getting pizzas and having the PlayStation on some of that type fair. Tomb Raider, games like Resident Evil, Twisted Metal, Grand Theft Auto, Tomb Raider, some of those type pitches just to be able to have just within that relative type fanfare, just a good aspect to kind of have some of that, just some good pitches. But I look after it, yeah, it's just this is some great, just basic on a dungeon metal, just for you and your pals, some great homies type music. But yeah, so basically the only real song I feel like that's any different from like the rest of these particular ones, I guess I could say there's a couple different ones also, which would be Born for Burning, which kind of feels like the pseudo single on here, and then the Return of the Darkness and Evil, the title track. But those basically have some pretty shredding riffages as well, so it's just kind of the concept. But I'll go ahead and talk about Born for Burning as if that's the single, because I think basically it might as well be, because that's the most popular song off this album. So this is basically like a vicious kind of instant turn up. I would definitely feel like this really gets things revved just like that. This reminds of like Metallica, Master of Puppets, the lead single off that particular project, the title track single that got the radio airplay. And this is just like a stock 80s metal kind of hangout type gem to kind of get here. Real nice one. This has the most affable type riffs in terms of like being a black metal, but just kind of in a commercial type sense. So it's an excellent type concept, kind of get some of that here. I mean, I don't know how much full bound that Bathory really got airplay and pitches like that, just questioning their radio type appeal. But this is definitely one that probably had some good attempts, and this overall is the most commercial friendly, I'd have to say. But I'd probably say, no, I don't know how much full bound, once again, the promotion about it was, but I would have to say that the Return of the Darkness and Evil is another one that has the second most radio appeal, just within the aspect of at least being black metal, that this is shredding, it's complete blistering riffage, but it's at least something that has some commercial bite. It's like a good 1-2 punch with Born for Burning. I would definitely feel like some snarly metal riffage, like I was saying. This is a pretty good radio grab to kind of get here. So it's just some good appeal. Now, obviously, if you're not with like the demonic type vocals, just the aspect behind it, I would definitely say this would probably be more of like an Ozzy's Boneyard type pitch. I remember like XM Radio having like an Ozzy's Boneyard, that this is more heavy type metal. Obviously, this is more like, I feel like this is like when you think of folks like Mushroom Head or some of those type folks that just probably didn't have that many charting hits, something like Fear Factory, some of those type folks, I'd say it's within that riffage type of damage that this is real shrieking and this awesome, but this is kind of the concept. It's just not going to be that much radio friendly bite. But these are at least two songs, Born for Burning and The Return of Darkness and Evil, the title track, that have the most appeal. But yeah, to get another song that's different on here, like I was saying, the only other song compared to like these other 10 songs on here, apart from the two singles, or at least the two pseudo singles that I listed, that has any sort of differential riffage from like the standard just kind of indoor hangout, just get completely blissed out of your mind type format, which is not a bad thing whatsoever, I'd say. But it would be the getting blissed out of your mind whatsoever is not a bad thing. But I look after the only differential type riffage, just of something different on here, would be Rite of Darkness. Is like a heavy turn up while getting shit done. I would definitely feel like this is like some errands doing, I would definitely have to say, but not turning down while doing it. And this is just a good song to be glared to. I just would have to say, this real glared type feel, this overall glaze, this kind of October type fare. Basically just some demon time type turn up, just in like the evening type sense, just getting the bills paid, some of that type fare. Just one singular song for that sort of pitch of just being out and about, but still basically being in that same black metal type torment of just something. This is the only in between type song on here to really get. Most of this is just in at the house party, just real standard night, just going from like 6 o'clock p.m. to 6 o'clock in the morning, some of that type. This is an album that lasts the whole night and beyond, as far as that pitch is going to go along with it. It's really just some hangout type crazes for constant pizza, constant snackage, some smokage, hella sippage, some of that type fair, video games, some of that type mess, just standard house party type craze, and just overall appeal. Gothic chica, some of that type fair, juggalette, some of those type tones, I'd have to say. This really works for that. This overall appeal. So yeah, I'm just gonna list the rest of the songs in here. It's just gonna be pretty straightforward, the rest of these, just because a lot of these are just so completely similar. But I do feel like at least some of these, I will try to list some of the ones that at least has some degree of just like something that has like a different cadence within the riffage, but it's just going to be, most of these are just blockade one after the other in terms of like the heavy pounding quality just for like a crazy night. So Sadist is one that kind of has some of that appeal, but the Sadist is one that definitely does some damage. Just like a woozy kind of really feeling it slug night of Jamboree. I would definitely feel like this is one where it kind of feels like you're warped out of your head, but just kind of feeling the head trip about it. It's like a haunting kind of black metal vocals. This definitely has some haunting black metal vocals, I would have to say, and the fun factor is at 11 on this particular song. So it's just an overall pretty excellent concept to get a lot of these. Just the overall appeal behind these just really has like pretty carnivorous type times. Reap of Evil is a nice one. It's like a bleary kind of shredding band work. I would definitely feel like this has a demonic pace and execution. I would definitely have to say, and this is like some red eyes, this type flair, just really glared out of your mind, sure to rock nights and go long just within the pitch behind it. Bestial Lust is another quality one. It's like an initial hangout, get loud, enjoy evening excitement type tune to kind of get here as like a stock album cut. I would definitely feel like the band work just completely goes nuts on this one. So some of these type ones, Bestial Lust, The Wind of Mayhem, some of these type ones, Total Destruction, really get to really tearing things up. I just would have to say in particular as far as those pitches kind of happen. It's really the band work is to be admired on this particular product because they definitely go in. They're definitely some of the most gnarled and crazy type bands to really get here. They're definitely up there with Metallica in their 80s prime, Ace or Black Sabbath in their 80s and 70s prime, some of those type pitches. I'd have to say Mushroom Head, Slipknot, some of those type folks, Fear Factory, some of those type folks that just really get towards it, some of those type pitches in particular. Definitely Slayer, some of those type folks I'd have to say. They go in, I would definitely have to suppose. Sepultura, that's another nice one that kind of does that. The Winds of Mayhem is another highlight. It's like a demonic kind of continued crazy night fun, I would definitely have to say. It's definitely like some indoor kind of hangout goodness. I definitely have to suppose it's the concept just between getting some of that, just the viciousness that kind of goes along with it, just consistent kind of nights of just indoor. There's plenty of just pizza going around, smokage going around, some of that type fair, just vicious kind of hangout night. And this is like some wicked, this is definitely like some wicked kind of autumn haze metal to kind of get here. Just the vocals on these particular songs are just pretty haunting. So this is definitely like good spooky season type music. Obviously, just you can tell by the album cover, some of those type fares, just excellent work, works great for that. Total Destruction's a real nice one. It's another quality one. It's definitely an immediate one to go for. It's like a crazy kind of mosh pit bonanza. I would definitely feel like there's definitely some indoor hangout carnage. Like I was saying, another good stock one for that. It's like a get hell torn up and feel good kind of jam out type song to kind of get here. So yeah, I'd probably say some immediate ones to go for would be Born for Burning, Total Destruction, The Winds of Mayhem, The Rite of Darkness, The Return of Darkness of Evil, the Return of Darkness and Evil, the title track, some of those type pitches, and probably Sadist. I mean, me recommending every single song on here that's a pretty good pitch, but just paying attention to some of the ones that just kind of have like, I definitely feel like the commercial ones on here, the title track, and then uh, Born for Burning are definitely some immediate ones just to kind of kick things off, just to adapt to like the learning curve. And then there's just some ones, I mean, this album just hits like a ton of bricks. So you're just automatically immersed in it. It's just kind of concept. There's no kind of just like primer for this sort of pitch. It's basically just you go from just basically being completely sober to having like 11, 12 shots in you just like that, just really feeling it. Some pitches like that, just really getting torn up as far as that pitch will kind of happen. Just a real augmented, tormented type fare for like some autumn glaze. Just some excellent concepts. Is what I have to say. Possessed is a pretty nice one. This is another good quality one. It's like a head trip kind of blitzer. I would feel like multiple songs like Sadist, Son of Damned, Son of the Damned, and Bestial Lust. I would feel like some of these are just some good, excellent 1, 2, 3, 4 punches to kind of get here just within the tone. Just all these being that blitzing, I'd have to say. It's like some heavy hitting. This is definitely like some heavy hitting hangout type music to kind of get here. So it's just some continued type hits to really get. This whole album really works within that fare, but basically you should have quite some fun with this particular album as far as like the blitzing type appeal of it. Underappreciated gem here, definitely one that doesn't get as commonly talked about. Just very much needs more shine, I'd have to say. Trying to think of some other ones I haven't talked about on here. I'm not sure if I talked about Reap of Evil, but I'll go ahead and talk about this one. It's like a bleary kind of shredding band work. I would definitely feel like it's like a demonic pace and execution, I'd have to say. Yeah, I talked about that one. I'm not sure if I talked about Son of Damned. I'm not sure if I talked about the Son of the Damned song, so I'll go ahead and talk about this one again if I haven't. Just the pitch behind it is like a glaring kind of indoor hangout noise. I would definitely feel like it's like some local kind of get crunk and tipsy. Definitely that vibe's going to get towards that, and it's like an easy vibe for like the whole night. Definitely some good PlayStation type music to kind of get here. It's overall like the PL, just a standard hangout type fare, just a good pitch behind it. Just basically kind of zone out and enjoy the times, grub a bit, just appreciate how the night's kind of going. Just good pitch for that. I mean, obviously the craziness factor is pretty turned up pretty high, but it's definitely some mosh pit music just within an indoor type fair, just not necessarily destroying property and just damaging things and just getting tore up, but just the concept of just appreciating the time, this really this rock on, this really kind of rock on kind of vibes here. So that's a particular pitch about this album. So yeah, this album gets a 10 out of 10. The social score, that's kind of tricky. I think I'm going to give the social score like a 9.25 out of 10. I would give the social score a 10 out of 10 just because the overall blistering appeal. Me recommending all 10 of these songs, their actual songs on here, is an easy enough thing to recommend. But I just look after the concept. It just feels like their commercial bite is just not quite as feral. I feel like they definitely have some good concepts. They helped spearhead the black metal subgenre. They definitely were one of the progenitors of it, which is pretty excellent type concept. Definitely getting some of that. This is really like the party factor of this particular album is just sheer. This is kind of the concept. It's definitely something that you want to have for like a craze night. There's just multiple, more than 5, 6, 7, 8 songs that just have this particular craze night. The whole album's just packed to the gills full of hangout type fare in an indoor sense. This great PlayStation kind of great PlayStation hangout, just house party type vibes. Just kind of get some of that type fare pizza type music. Just overall just blitzing of times just to having like some indoor type fare, I suppose. It's really the concept of just more localized and residential type fun to kind of have with that. But I look after it. I do feel like Born for Burning was a popular enough song, but it still feels pretty modest all these years later that it only has a little over 1 million plays. And it's really the second most popular song would be Total Destruction, which is another excellent song, but it just doesn't have the commercial bite. And then my choice for like the second biggest radio appeal type song would be The Return of Darkness and Evil, the title track. But that's just, I mean, these are good songs, but this is kind of the concept of just questioning the overall casual appeal of this. I mean, obviously fans of metal should take to like a fish to water as far as those pitches going to happen, but it just doesn't have like the massive kind of Master of Puppets type single or like the Back in Black type single, some of those type ones. I mean, there's some defining 80s metal on here, but it's just kind of more in like a relative kind of not necessarily secretive, but just kind of select type crowd as far as those pitches kind of happen. So it's this kind of thing. But 9.25 social. In terms of the future, like Bathory, that's impossible because, or I mean, at least for the most part, it's impossible because Quorthon's deceased, unfortunately. And we look after these particular pitches that, yeah, they haven't put out a project since 2003. But it's just kind of the concept that there is plenty more to get to. I definitely want to get to some more of their black metal type albums. I do want to review the Bathory album from 1984. It has a pretty haunting album cover. I'd say in particular just makes me question about the overall appeal of that one. I would definitely suspect it's more of the same in like an extremely good type way. I suppose that's a good concept about it. But we'll get to some more of these just to have to see how it particularly goes. But this is a surprise hit here. Definitely an underrated type pick to kind of get in an easy kind of 80s metal classic that just needs a lot more shine.